chat box. She said, I just graduated from uni and did not get any chance of interview yet. And I think it's her parents asked her to go back to China, but she still want to have a try. And her major is in business though, but she want to hear what you thought about it. Yeah.
I think what John has covered just now are really good advice. As long as you still have a valid visa, look for any job opportunities that are relevant. If you were, I don't know about business, but if you study business, you know, I'm sure there will be a lot of job opportunities that are relevant to business studies. So what John has covered, you know, talk to the people who are in the industry and look for the possibilities of that studies. And see if you can, you know, find some way to relate back to the business studies, and then find a job. I don't know about her if she has a permanent residence or not. If not, no, she might be looking at, you know, applying for residency to stay in New Zealand. But the key thing is you need to find a job that are relevant to your qualification. So that's the tricky part. So I would say to her, as long as you still have a valid open visa, keep trying, because it's 2020 has not been easy for anyone in the country, in the world. So, you know, it will be very difficult to find a job. It will be difficult to find an interview, but you need to keep looking for different opportunities that are relevant to your studies.
Graduated, I guess your student visa will come to an end and you can apply for this 3-year post-study work visa, which our NZISA actually our previous exec team advocated for with the government. So yeah, that's another way to look at applying jobs and staying in New Zealand at the same time. So it doesn't necessarily to put your New Zealand journey to an end. And also, I guess I was reading one of the new law talk that was published during the lockdown. I think they said, don't worry too much about downgrading yourself just a little bit, because it's not going to for long. It's not going to be for a huge amount of time. I think the employers know that, and employers know how tough it is to find the right people. And I guess especially under this COVID environment, John just pointed out, it does take a lot of time for Kiwis to put their huge amount of trust in you. Because I was referred by my neighbor, that's why I had a very different start to many of other new clerks just came in. So I was really lucky to be at this very position. So yeah, I guess it's temporary. It's not a lifetime downgrade. It's probably sitting around probably half a year to about a year and a half once the economy is probably starting to recover back on track. It could be longer than that, but yeah, definitely don't be afraid to take all the opportunities available out there.
I think it's very important as well for the student Wang to understand what the visa means, because many employers, New Zealand employers, they don't understand what a post-study work visa means, because there are different types of visas. And usually when you support an immigrant or a person on temporary visa, you have to do lots of paperwork for that particular applicant. But because you hold a post-study work visa, that allows you to do many other things because it's an open work visa. So this is not immigration advice. I'm just saying that, you know, that you have this wonderful opportunity and you have to educate your employers. And I also think the other thing that I usually find is that you have to have a communication with your parents, because your parents don't understand what's happening in New Zealand. And so having that open communication, maybe give yourself, I think what Catherine has done as well, like give yourself some timeline, extra years, maybe at this certain time, if I achieve this, then maybe I could do that, maybe go back home. But of course, when you have the 3-year open work visa, you can go home and come back so easily because it's an open work visa. So, you know, be mindful of your strategy, and I think it pays a long way if you know what the visa means for you.
Thank you, John. And so we have a Chinese student still learning language in a language school, and I think I'm not too sure if he or she wanted to study law, but the friends say actually it would be very hard for Chinese immigrants to learn the law. What do you think? Can you give some advice on as a second language speaker? How do you experience it, and probably what he or she can do to improve English? What do you experienced as a law student? Sorry, there's 3 questions. Are you able to unmute? Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. Yeah, I'll probably touch on some of the other points that I didn't get a chance to mention about the legal perspective on New Zealand law and obviously the common law in general. As a Chinese immigrant to study law, would that be very hard? The first answer to that would be, actually, it is very hard for even the local Kiwis to study law. That's a known fact out there. Lots of my mates are struggling, and a lot of my friends at uni are struggling at the moment. It is not. First of all, it's not for everyone. That I think you should probably ask yourself the very first question that John would tell people to do. Why do you want to study law? Because this is actually a very common question that I come across, that most employers at the big firms or even medium-sized, smaller-sized firm will ask you. That's at your interview. Why do you want to do law? Why do you study law? What do you see yourself in 10 years as a lawyer? So I guess as a Chinese student still learning language, some tips on that. I think probably what I did was, obviously, I think, as I already pointed out earlier, that don't try to speak your native language less and make more local friends. It is very difficult to start with, but I think once you get over that hurdle, it will become something you won't, because for myself at the moment, it is actually quite difficult to think in Chinese. It's because you have the switch thing you can turn on and off that your brain does. Is quite amazing. So if you think in English on a daily basis and you speak English, you try to force yourself to speak in English every day. So for example, if you wake up in the morning, I guess just getting to the rhythm, just to prep yourself, it's a mentality thing. It is quite difficult to start with, but it is not. It is definitely possible. I've tried probably for the first 3 months, because I have to swap from understand Singaporean English to New Zealand slangs and all other stuff. So it is definitely possible, because I had a host family. They're from the UK, so I have to understand the British way of speaking. I think one thing to study law in New Zealand as a Chinese student would be I think the advantage of it's quite huge, I would say, because I guess one of the reasons they hired me in the first place was because I'm bilingual, and a lot of overseas investment obviously are not happening at the moment, but back in two years ago, before the government introduced the Overseas Investment Act, there are lots of Chinese and Asian investment companies and individuals will come to New Zealand and invest. It is still possible on commercial spaces and buying land in general. And your language skill as a Chinese native speaker will definitely stand out among the job market in many other roles as well. Because so as I mentioned, I have been here for 2 years, and I'm actually considered as a senior law clerk, and I'm the head of clerk. I'm overseeing 7 law clerks, and I link the solicitor team as well. So yeah, it is. Once you get into it, you get this massive explosion of what you want to do and where you can be in 5 to 10 years. I got invited by one of our partners to join the Chief Justice to have dinner with her earlier this year in March, just before the first lockdown. So there are many senior barristers and Queen's Counsels, QCs out there, and one of the retired court of appeal judges said to me that, because what the Chief Justice is seeing right now is she wants to set out this diversity in the legal sector. And I believe the police commissioner also said a similar thing, that diversity is hugely important to New Zealand. Because as I mentioned before, everyone is an immigrant to New Zealand, even the Kiwis. If you think they're Kiwis, New Zealand European, they're from Europe. They're not from New Zealand originally. So, yeah, that's one of the things will be a huge advantage for people from all different backgrounds, because that's going to be the future. Because at the moment, on the bench, most judges are middle-aged New Zealand-wide man or woman. So that's very undiverse, and in the future they are looking at to change that. So there's this, I think John mentioned, there's a huge gap there. Once you get into the industry, you'll be able to realize what you can achieve.
Thank you, John.
Dedication is definitely a hugely important part, and also I think this is quite common in the legal sector, that there's saying that I heard, and it is quite true, that 70% of the time it's not about the law. It's about the client engagement and the broad understanding of what your client wants. And obviously that another 30% of the time it will actually sit down to do a research and understand what you can do as a leeway, what your client wants. So at the end of the day, you're doing most of the work for a client, but in general space, if you want to advocate for, so like what Asian Family Services does, advocate for a specific community, then you have to have a broad understanding of how you can achieve it. Because I think either you want to become a politician or you become a judge to make law in New Zealand. That's the two ways of making a change. That's actually one of the reasons I wanted to pursue law.
Thank you.
One of the things I found with many, if I guess the student was asking, and the student is an international student, what I found is that many of our international students, if you ask them what is the language in their mobile devices or their computers, usually it's their native language. And like Ryan said, you have to actually try to, I guess, not to really forget about your previous language, just sort of immerse yourself to this new language. So you have the one of the simplest ways, just change the language on your computer and your cell phone to English, and that will be a good first step.
Emily used agent recruitment services to job searching at the moment, and the recruitment company asked for reference before doing the service, and she's worried about giving out the reference name will lead out. The fact is, like she's thinking about leaving her current employment. So, like she wanted some advice from you actually. What happens if she doesn't want to give out her current employer to know that she's looking for a job? What can she do?
All right, I guess what Emily's doing is getting the help of a recruitment agent. So I guess always remember, recruitment agents, the reason why the recruitment agent is doing the reference check is because the recruitment agent is already doing the job search prep work. Because what will happen is they will put you to companies. So usually what happens with recruitment agents is they refer their best candidates to the companies. And before you have to make sure that you are the right candidate for them to refer, because that's how they get money. And so the reason why the reference check is happening, because they're already sort of screening you. Now, if you feel that, and this is understandable, you don't want to lose your job because you don't want your employer to think, oh, you're going to be leaving me. So what I would suggest Emily to do is to have a conversation with the agent and just say, well, I am worried that if I give my manager as my referee, one of my referees, the manager might think that I will be leaving the company. So what you can do is think of another referee that you can use. So you don't only, the manager is one of the options, but it could be, the idea is a person who is one role higher than you. So it could be your supervisor, your team leader, even your senior co-worker. Now, if you can't really get that, even your colleague would be a good, referee. Now, sometimes if you go through recruitment, the recruitment team of a company, it's sort of standard that they ask for the manager as one of the referees. What I would always do is still have that conversation and just ask them, well, this is the situation. I'm a bit concerned about this. Can this particular person replace my manager as a referee? And the other option, sorry, I have so many options. The other option is have a feel of your relationship with your manager, because sometimes the managers would understand why, especially if it's about visas. So if they cannot support you with your application, then usually they will understand why you are moving on. But of course, you don't want to burn bridges, because this is a very small place and people know almost everyone to first or second degree. You'll be surprised. And that's why. And also, you know, with these ones, usually it's always good for you to actually, for you, Emily, to read on about skilled migrant category. It's called, because there are different ways to become a resident as well. So as you can see, there's so many things out there. It can be confusing, but generally immigrants tend to use the skilled migrant category. It's called, in short, SMC. So that's where you're gonna find all this information that Ivan has talked about, and what sort of responsibility will the employer need for you. Usually, like Ivan said, it's not a lot really, but it's always good to have a supportive employer when you are applying for your residency. It makes it easier generally.